The stars had always been watched. For over 15,000 years, the Galactic Assembly had observed the younger species crawling toward the light. They monitored radio signals, tracked primitive satellites, and waited with patient anticipation for each civilization to take its first real step into the cosmic family. Ambassador Kelrick stood before the massive viewing screen in the Assembly's central diplomatic station. His silver skin reflected the soft blue light of the display, and his 4 eyes tracked the data streaming across multiple panels. Behind him, his team of specialists worked quietly at their stations, the gentle hum of advanced technology filling the air. "Another beacon detection," announced Mira, a young analyst from the Devari species. Her translucent wings fluttered with excitement. "The humans have found our marker near their Proxima Centauri system." Kelrick allowed himself a small smile. He had been doing this work for 3 centuries, welcoming 47 different species into the Assembly. Each time felt special. Each time reminded him why the Assembly existed: to guide, to protect, to unite the scattered children of the galaxy. "Prepare the welcome protocols," Kelrick said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Review their cultural databases. I want to understand these humans before they send their greeting message." The team moved with practiced efficiency. Within hours, they had compiled extensive reports on humanity. The species had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, a remarkable accomplishment for a civilization barely 12,000 years old. Their home planet, Earth, was a blue and green world teeming with life and diversity. Kelrick spent days reviewing human history through their own broadcasts. He watched their entertainment, their news, their attempts to send messages into the void. Humans were creative, passionate, and intensely curious. Their radio waves had been screaming into space for over a century, full of greetings and mathematical proofs and music. "They seem eager to find others," Mira observed, reviewing a collection of human attempts at interstellar communication. "Look at this. They sent physical objects into space with messages attached. They broadcasted their location freely. These are not a cautious people," Kelrick nodded. "They will be excited to finally receive an answer. Begin preparing the cultural exchange packages. Standard protocol, mathematical greetings, universal peace symbols, invitation to join the Assembly's network." Days passed. The team waited for humanity's response to the beacon. It was standard procedure. A species would detect the beacon, recognize it as artificial, and send some form of greeting. Sometimes it took weeks as they debated internally, but the message always came. Always. On the 8th day, Mira approached Kelrick with confusion in her compound eyes. "Ambassador, we have detected no transmission from human space. No message. No signal of any kind. Perhaps they need more time," Kelrick suggested. "They are newly spacefaring. They may be uncertain how to respond." But doubt crept into his thoughts. He reviewed the human broadcasts again. These were a people who talked constantly, who sent messages to empty space for decades hoping someone would hear. Why would they suddenly go silent when someone finally answered? 2 more weeks passed. The Assembly's High Council began to take notice. Director Thoran, a massive Kregath with thick gray skin and deep-set eyes, contacted Kelrick directly. "Ambassador, this silence is unusual," Thoran rumbled. "The humans have made no attempt to communicate. Should we send another beacon? Perhaps they did not understand the first?" Kelrick considered this carefully. "Yes, place another beacon at the edge of their home system. Make it obvious. They cannot miss it." The second beacon was deployed near humanity's asteroid belt, a clear and unmistakable sign. Its quantum signature pulsed with welcome messages in every mathematical language known to the Assembly. Surely the humans would respond now. 6 hours after deployment, the beacon vanished from sensors. "Report," Kelrick demanded, his calm finally cracking. Mira's wings had stopped moving, a sign of fear in her species. "The beacon is destroyed, Ambassador. Completely destroyed. We detected weapons fire. Some kind of kinetic projectile moving at near light speed. The humans targeted it deliberately." The operations center fell silent. Every member of the team stared at the screens in disbelief. In 15,000 years of the Assembly's existence, no species had ever responded to a greeting with violence. Some had been afraid, some had been slow to respond, but none had opened fire. "Perhaps it was an accident," someone suggested weakly. "No," Kelrick said quietly, reviewing the data. "The tracking was precise. They calculated the trajectory perfectly. They meant to destroy it. He looked at the data streams showing Earth's radio signals, still broadcasting entertainment and communication into space, as if nothing had happened. And they have sent no explanation. No apology, no message at all. The High Council convened within hours. The Grand Chamber filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all murmuring in confusion and concern. Director Thorne called the meeting to order, his deep voice silencing the crowd. "We face an unprecedented situation," Thorne announced. "A new species has demonstrated faster-than-light capability, discovered our beacons and responded with destruction and silence. We must decide how to proceed." The debate raged for hours. Some argued for patience, others for more aggressive diplomatic efforts. The humans had violated no laws. They had destroyed objects in their own space. But their silence was deeply troubling. Ambassador Velen of the Sorrenti spoke, her crystalline voice chiming through the chamber. "Perhaps we misunderstand. Perhaps silence is their way. Some species are naturally more cautious." "No," Kelrick interrupted, drawing all eyes to him. He displayed human broadcasts on the chamber's main screen. "These humans have been shouting into the void for generations. They built monuments meant to communicate with aliens. They sent physical messages on spacecraft, hoping someone would find them millions of years in the future. They are not a silent species. They chose this silence deliberately. But why?" Mira asked from her position in the analyst section. "Why would they suddenly stop talking when they finally found what they were looking for?" No one had an answer. The council voted to send Ambassador Kelrick himself to make contact. He would take a small diplomatic vessel, unarmed and broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. Surely when the humans saw that living beings wished to speak with them, they would respond. Kelrick's ship, the Peaceful Approach, entered human space 3 weeks later. It broadcast continuously. "We come in peace. We mean no harm. We wish to speak with you. Please respond." The messages went out in every human language the assembly had decoded: English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and hundreds more. The ship moved slowly, deliberately, making no aggressive actions. For 2 days there was no response. Kelrick and his small crew waited in the dark between stars, their ship a bright beacon of hopeful communication. On the 3rd day, proximity alarms screamed to life. 3 ships appeared from nowhere. They simply materialized from empty space, surrounding the diplomatic vessel in perfect formation. Kelrick stared at the displays in shock. The technology required for such precise, faster-than-light jumps should have been beyond humanity for decades. "Continue broadcasting peaceful intentions," Kelrick ordered, though his hands trembled slightly. "Do not activate any defensive systems." The human ships were unlike anything in the Assembly's databases. They were angular, brutal-looking things covered in what appeared to be weapons ports. No decorative elements, no artistic touches, pure function. "They're scanning us," the ship's pilot reported. "Multiple types of scans. They're learning everything about our ship." Then the human ships moved. With speed and precision that spoke of extensive practice, they fired. Not to destroy, Kelrick realized this immediately, but to disable. Beams of energy struck the Peaceful Approach's weapon systems, though the ship had none. They struck the engine manifolds, shutting down faster-than-light capability. They struck communication arrays, leaving only short-range systems functional. In less than 30 seconds, Kelrick's ship was helpless. "They're boarding us," the pilot said, his voice hollow with fear. Kelrick stood from his chair, straightening his diplomatic robes. "Everyone remain calm. We are diplomats. We are protected by assembly law." The airlock hissed open. Human soldiers entered. Kelrick had reviewed human military history, had seen their wars and conflicts in their broadcasts. But seeing human soldiers in person was different. They moved like water, like shadows, each one covering the others in a dance of tactical precision. Their weapons were raised, but not firing. Their faces were covered by dark helmets that revealed nothing. The lead human, identified by different markings on the armor, approached Kelrick directly. The helmet retracted, revealing a human face. Dark skin, sharp eyes, and an expression of complete calm. "Ambassador Kelrick of the Torvan species," the human said, pronouncing the name perfectly. "You are not under arrest. You are not in danger. Do not resist. How do you know my name?" Kelrick asked, then realized the answer. "You decoded our broadcasts." The human said nothing. The soldiers moved through the ship with frightening efficiency. gathering the crew in the central chamber. Other humans accessed the ship's computer systems, copying everything. "Please," Kelrick said, trying to maintain diplomatic composure. "We came to talk." "We mean you no harm. Why are you doing this?" The human commander looked at him for a long moment. "You entered our space uninvited. You placed objects in our territory. You assumed much. We were greeting you. This is how first contact works. We have done this for 15,000 years with thousands of species. That," the human said quietly, "is part of the problem." The humans worked for 3 hours, taking everything, every file, every database entry, every scrap of information about the assembly. They treated the crew with strange courtesy, offering water and ensuring no one was injured, but they were absolutely thorough. Before they left, the human commander stood before Kelrick one final time. "We are releasing you unharmed. You will leave our space immediately. You will not return. You will not send more beacons, more ships, or more messages. This is your only warning." "But we just want to talk," Kelrick pleaded. "We want to welcome you to the galactic community." The human's expression remained unreadable. "No, you want us to join your assembly. We've reviewed your protocols. We understand what you offer. We're not interested." "You don't understand." "Ambassador," the human interrupted, and for the first time Kelrick heard emotion in the voice. It was not anger. It was pity. "We understand perfectly. Now leave. Don't make us ask twice." The humans departed as efficiently as they had arrived. The Peaceful Approach's engines came back online, just enough to limp out of human space. Kelrick sat in his chair, staring at the empty displays where the human ships had vanished once again into impossible stealth. His communications officer, a young Torvan named Pellis, spoke with a shaking voice. "Ambassador, they moved like they've been fighting wars for centuries. They weren't afraid of us at all." Kelrick thought about the human soldiers, their perfect discipline, their complete confidence. He thought about their technology, advancing impossibly fast. Most of all, he thought about their silence, speaking only when necessary, revealing nothing, watching everything. "No," Kelrick said quietly. "They weren't afraid, and that terrifies me." The Peaceful Approach limped back to assembly space, carrying a message humanity never intended to send. Silence is not ignorance. Silence is not fear. Sometimes silence is the most dangerous message of all. The Assembly's Grand Council chamber had never felt so tense. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Kelrick's encounter with human forces, and the silence from Earth had only deepened. Not a single message had crossed the boundary of human space. Not one signal of greeting, of threat, or of explanation. Director Thorin stood at the center of the circular chamber, his massive form turning slowly to address the hundreds of species representatives gathered. "We must make a decision," he rumbled. "The human situation grows more concerning each day." Kelrick sat in the Torvan delegation section, his 4 eyes fixed on the data streaming across his personal display. Since returning from human space, he had done nothing but analyze every scrap of information the humans had allowed them to keep. More troubling were the things the humans had taken. Every database about assembly technology, every diplomatic protocol, every piece of information about member species and their capabilities. Ambassador Velen's crystalline voice chimed through the chamber. "Perhaps we are overreacting. One species wishes isolation. Is that not their right?" "It's not the isolation that concerns me," Kelrick replied, standing to address the council. "It's the preparation. Show them." The central display changed, showing intercepted radio transmissions from Earth. Mira, who had become Kelrick's primary analyst on human matters, had spent 3 months decoding human communications. What she found had turned concern into something approaching fear. "These are civilian broadcasts," Mira explained, her wings completely still, a sign of deep unease in her species. "Human news reports, public announcements, even their entertainment. 3 months ago, humanity was divided into nearly 200 separate nations. They fought wars against each other. They competed for resources. They argued about everything." The display shifted, showing more recent broadcasts. "Now look. 2 weeks after our first contact attempt, they formed a unified planetary government. Every nation, every faction, every former enemy came together. And they have said publicly and repeatedly exactly why: to face the alien threat." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "They see us as a threat?" someone asked. "They call us the visitors or the watchers. Mira continued. Never by friendly names. Their news broadcasts speak of unity against external danger. Their entertainment has shifted. Suddenly every program discusses alien invasion scenarios. This is deliberate. They are preparing their entire population psychologically. Kelrick pulled up additional data, but it's not just psychological. We've intercepted coded military communications. What we can decode is disturbing. They've converted civilian manufacturing to military production. They've built new shipyards in orbit around their moon and Mars. They've established weapons platforms throughout their solar system. In 3 months? Director Thorin's eyes widened. That's impossible. I thought so too, Kelrick said quietly. But our long-range sensors confirm it. Hundreds of new structures. Possibly thousands. They work with incredible speed. Representative Corin of the Margeth species spoke up, his thick tentacles coiling with agitation. This is insane. They cannot match assembly technology. We have thousands of worlds, millions of ships. Why would they prepare for war? That's what we need to understand, Kelrick said. I request permission to send covert observation drones. We need to know what humanity is planning. The debate lasted hours, but eventually the council agreed. Within days, dozens of tiny observation drones crossed into human space, using the assembly's most advanced stealth technology. They were designed to be invisible, undetectable, capable of watching from millions of kilometers away. The first reports came back within a week, and they changed everything. Kelrick stared at his screens in disbelief. This cannot be accurate. Check the sensors again. Confirmed, Ambassador, Mira said, her voice barely a whisper. The humans have constructed over 400 military stations, 73 shipyards, and at least 2,000 weapons platforms. And that's just what we can see. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Kelrick pulled up detailed scans of human technology and felt his blood chill. They're using our designs, he said. Look at these power cores. They're based on assembly quantum reactors. The weapons ports use the same harmonic principles as our defensive systems. The ships themselves. He trailed off, staring at the schematics. They've reverse-engineered everything, Mira finished. Everything we've ever broadcast, everything from the beacons, everything they copied from the peaceful approach. They've studied it, improved it, and built their own versions. In 3 months, Director Thoran called an emergency session. The council chamber filled with frightened representatives all reviewing the same horrifying data. How is this possible? Ambassador Velen demanded. Our technology took thousands of years to develop. They've had 3 months. Kelrick had been researching this question obsessively. I've reviewed human history extensively. They have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When threatened, humans innovate at frightening speeds. During their Second World War, a conflict barely 2 centuries ago, they went from primitive aircraft to nuclear weapons in 6 years. 6 years. When motivated by survival, humanity transforms. He pulled up more data, but there's something else. Humans are exceptional at pattern recognition. It's how their brains evolved. They see patterns in everything, understand systems intuitively. Give them a working example of technology, and they don't just copy it, they understand the principles and improve it. They're using our own technology against us, someone said. Not exactly, Mira corrected. They're using the principles but adapting them. Look at this ship design. It uses our FTL physics but arranged in a completely different configuration. They've made it more efficient somehow. And this weapons array. It's based on our particle beams, but they've modified the frequency modulation. Specialist Iran, an expert in comparative sociology, requested to speak. His 6-legged form clicked across the floor as he approached the central podium. I've been analyzing human cultural broadcasts, trying to understand their psychology. I believe I've found something important. The display shifted to show various human historical events. Throughout their recorded history, humans have encountered strangers. Sometimes these encounters were peaceful, but often, very often, strangers brought conquest. Their history is filled with examples. One human civilization meeting another, appearing friendly, then slowly absorbing or destroying the original culture. Images flashed across the screen. Colonizers and indigenous peoples. Empires and conquered nations, culture after culture erased or transformed. Humans have learned a bitter lesson from their own past. Strangers bearing gifts are the most dangerous strangers of all. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. But we're not like that. Ambassador Velen protested. We don't conquer, we guide. We help species join the galactic community peacefully. Do we? Iran asked quietly. He pulled up the Assembly's own records. Let me show you something. In the past 15,000 years, the Assembly has welcomed 3,417 species into membership. Of those species, how many maintain independent military forces? The answer appeared on screen. 0. How many maintain unrestricted faster-than-light technology, capable of traveling without Assembly jump gates? 0. How many have declined Assembly membership and remained independent? 0. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Iran continued, his voice steady but sad. We are not conquerors. We are sincere in our desire for peace. But from an outside perspective, what do we look like? A massive organization that assimilates every species it encounters. We offer membership, guidance, integration into our community. But what we never offer is the option to say no and remain truly independent. Kelrick felt something cold settle in his stomach. The humans see us as a threat to their sovereignty. Worse, Iran said. They see us as an inevitable threat. In their view, we're a hegemony disguised as a democracy. We rule through cultural dominance and economic dependence. We may mean well, but the result is the same. Every species that joins us eventually loses its independence. But that's for their protection, Director Thoron protested. Young species need guidance. They need to be protected from themselves and from hostile forces. And there, Aaron said, is the core of the problem. We assume that protection requires control. The humans disagree. They have decided they would rather face the entire galaxy alone than surrender their freedom to choose their own path. New data interrupted the discussion. The observation drones had intercepted fragmented human military communications. Mira decoded them rapidly, her wings beginning to tremble again. Ambassador, you need to see this, she said urgently. The messages were partially encrypted, but enough came through to be understood. Grid defense pattern alpha operational. External sensor net at 97% coverage. Reverse engineering team reports breakthrough in quantum shielding. New vessels will be immune to Assembly tracking. Strategic assessment complete. The Assembly monitors through beacon network. Recommend systematic elimination of all beacons in adjacent sectors. And most chilling. Command confirms doctrine. Assume hostile intent until proven otherwise. If they come in peace, they can prove it from outside our borders. Kelrick read the messages multiple times, a sinking feeling growing in his chest. They're not preparing to defend against an invasion. They're preparing to extend their defensive perimeter. They're going to start operating outside their own space. As if to confirm this, new reports arrived from the observation drones. Human ships had been detected in 7 different star systems surrounding their space. Not attacking, not colonizing, just watching. Silent vessels that appeared and disappeared, clearly monitoring Assembly activity exactly as the Assembly monitored them. They're using our own tactics, Mira said. They're watching us watch them. Director Thoran's voice was grim. This is psychological warfare. Yes, Kelrick agreed. And it's working. They're showing us that they can go anywhere, see anything, and we never know they're there. They're proving that our technology is not superior enough to keep them contained. Every day, their capabilities grow. The Council debated for days. Factions formed. Those who wanted to launch a preemptive strike to neutralize the human threat. Those who wanted to offer greater concessions and better diplomatic terms. And those who wanted to simply leave humanity alone and hope they stayed in their space. But beneath all the debate, Kelrick saw a deeper truth that terrified him. He shared it with Mira in private late one night as they reviewed data. The humans haven't stopped communicating, he said quietly. We keep saying they're silent, but that's not true. Every action is a message. Destroying the beacon said, stay away. Capturing our ship said, we are capable. Building their military said, we are serious. Watching us from the shadows says, you cannot contain us. Mira's wings fluttered nervously. Then what is the message we're supposed to understand? Kelrick looked at the star map showing human space, surrounded by Assembly territory on all sides. A single species alone facing a galaxy full of civilizations, and yet humanity showed no fear, sent no pleas for help, made no attempts to negotiate. The message, Kelrick said slowly, is that humanity will not be absorbed. They will not be guided. They will not surrender their freedom no matter the cost. And if we force the issue, he trailed off, looking at the data showing humanity's impossible rate of advancement. Then they'll fight, Mira finished. Even if they lose, they'll fight. Yes, but here's what terrifies me. I'm not certain they would lose. Not anymore. In human space, the construction continued. The silence continued. And every day humanity grew stronger, more prepared, more determined. The assembly had awakened something in humanity that perhaps had always been there. The absolute refusal to kneel. The conversation continued for days as Sarah shared more insights into human thinking. She explained humanity's obsession with independence, their history of resisting empires, their fundamental distrust of anyone claiming to know what's best for them. We've been fighting for freedom for thousands of years, Sarah said. Against kings, against emperors, against colonial powers, against each other. The struggle for self-determination is built into human culture at every level. We would rather die free than live under someone else's guidance, no matter how benevolent. Kelrick absorbed this, and Sarah could see him beginning to understand. But she had one more piece of information to share, and it was the most dangerous. Ambassador, there's something else you need to know, she said quietly. Earth's silence isn't just defensive posturing. It's active strategy. She pulled up intercepted communication between Earth Military Command and their scout vessels. While you've been watching us, we've been watching you. Human ships have mapped 17 assembly systems. We've identified major infrastructure, military installations, communication hubs. We've studied your patrol patterns and response times. Kelrick stood abruptly. This is reconnaissance for invasion. No, Sarah said firmly. It's intelligence gathering for deterrence. We're showing you that we can reach anywhere, gather information, and disappear. We're proving that containment is impossible. It's psychological warfare, yes, but it serves a defensive purpose, making you too uncertain of our capabilities to risk conflict. She showed him more data, including analysis that made her stomach churn with fear. Our military planners have war-gamed various scenarios. If the assembly attacks Earth directly, we lose. We know this, but they've calculated that we could destroy or cripple at least 40% of assembly military infrastructure before we fall. 40%, Ambassador. The economic damage would be catastrophic. It would take the assembly decades to recover. You're threatening mutual destruction, Kelrick said, his voice hollow. Yes, because it's the only deterrent we have that you'll respect. You won't attack us if victory costs too much, even if you'd eventually win. Sarah pulled up one final document, this one a strategic assessment she'd written herself before defecting. This is my analysis of where we're heading. In 6 months, Earth will have enough military power to present a credible threat to assembly border systems. In a year, we'll be able to strike deep into assembly space. In 5 years, if this continues, humanity will be able to fight a prolonged guerrilla war that could last decades. Why are you telling me this? Kelrick demanded. Why betray your own species? Because it doesn't have to happen, Sarah said desperately. This whole disaster started from a misunderstanding. You approached us the way you approach every species, assuming we'd react like everyone else. But we're not like everyone else. We have our own trauma, our own history, our own way of seeing the universe. She stood, moving closer to Kelrick despite her fear. You can stop this. Go back to the assembly and make them understand. Humanity doesn't want to fight you. We just want to be left alone to make our own choices. Treat us as equals, not as children to be guided. Respect our sovereignty, absolutely. Give us space to breathe. And if we do this? Kelrick asked. What guarantee do we have that humanity won't attack anyway? Sarah smiled sadly. None. Just as we have no guarantee the assembly won't eventually try to force us to join. That's the fundamental problem. Trust has to be earned, and neither side has earned it yet. She pulled up one more piece of data, this one showing the rate of human technological advancement. But I can tell you this. Every day you wait, every day this standoff continues, humanity gets stronger. Our engineers are reverse engineering assembly technology, faster than your experts thought possible. Our scientists are making breakthroughs. Our industry is mobilizing like never before. The graph showed an exponential curve that made Kelrick's eyes widen. In 10 years, if we keep advancing at this rate, we might match assembly technology. In 20, we might exceed it in certain areas. Humans innovate fastest when threatened, Ambassador. You've given us the threat of a lifetime. Kelrick stared at the projections, and Sarah could see the calculations running behind his eyes. You're saying that time is not on the assembly's side. Exactly. If you're going to fight us, do it now while you have overwhelming advantage. But if you're going to make peace, do it now before both sides are too militarized to step back. She moved to the viewport. looking out at the stars. When I was a child, I dreamed of meeting aliens. I imagined it would be wonderful, sharing knowledge, learning about the universe, making friends across the cosmos. Instead, we're preparing for war with people who genuinely mean us no harm. It's insane, it's tragic, and it's preventable. Turning back to Kelrick, Sarah said, I risked my life to come here and tell you this. Humanity will negotiate, but only from a position of equality. Offer us membership in the Assembly as subordinates and we'll refuse and keep building weapons. Offer us partnership as equals, with full sovereignty and independence, and we'll listen. The Assembly has never had equal partners, Kelrick said. Only members and observers. Then maybe it's time to create a new category, Sarah suggested, or accept that humanity will forge its own path, with or without Assembly approval. Kelrick took Sarah's information back to the Assembly, along with his own recommendations. The High Council received the intelligence with shock and dismay. The data Sarah provided confirmed their worst fears. Humanity was advancing faster than projected, understood Assembly weaknesses better than expected, and was absolutely committed to maintaining independence at any cost. But Sarah had also provided something else, a path forward, a way to de-escalate. The question was whether the Assembly had the wisdom to take it. The Assembly's High Council chamber had never been so divided. For 3 days, they had debated Sarah Chen's information, argued over projections and strategies, and watched their unity crumble under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Director Thoran stood at the center, his massive form showing signs of stress. His gray skin had darkened, a biological response to sustained anxiety in his species. Around him, representatives shouted, argued, and demanded action. We must strike now, bellowed Representative Corin, his tentacles coiling aggressively. Every day we wait, the humans grow stronger. Dr. Chen's data proves it. They're reverse engineering our technology at impossible speeds. In a year, they'll be too powerful to contain without massive casualties. Contain? Ambassador Velen's crystalline voice cut through the noise with sharp clarity. Listen to yourself. When did we become an organization that contains species? We are supposed to welcome them, not imprison them. This is different, Corin shot back. The humans have made themselves a threat. They've militarized their entire civilization. They've rejected every peaceful overture. They're planning for war with us. Kelrick stood, his 4 eyes scanning the chamber. They're planning for war because we gave them reason to. Dr. Chen made that clear. We approach them the same way we've approached 3,000 other species, never considering that humanity might have different needs, different fears, different history. So we're to blame for their aggression? Someone called out. Yes, Kelrick said firmly. We are, not for malice, but for arrogance. We assumed our way was the only way. We assumed that what worked for 3,000 species would work for the 3,001st. We were wrong. Mira, now recognized as the Assembly's primary human expert, projected new data across the chamber's displays. I've spent the last week analyzing everything we know about humanity, including Dr. Chen's defection itself. I've found something important. The displays showed patterns in human culture, repeated themes across their history. Humans have a concept they call the underdog. It appears in their stories, their culture, their entire worldview. They admire and identify with those who fight against overwhelming odds. Their heroes are rarely the powerful. They're the ones who resist power. She pulled up human mythology, literature, and popular entertainment. Stories of small groups defeating empires, of rebels overthrowing tyrants, of individuals standing against systems. This is the lens through which humanity views us. We are not the good guys in their story. We are the empire. We are the overwhelming force that the plucky rebels must resist, but that's insane, someone protested. We're trying to help them. Are we? Specialist Iron stepped forward, his 6 legs clicking on the floor. I've been reviewing Dr. Chen's analysis of our own behavior. She's right. We've never had a truly independent species in the Assembly. Every member has surrendered significant sovereignty in exchange for our protection and technology. He displayed the statistics again, but this time with additional context. When we offer membership, we present it as the only option. We don't say you can join or remain independent. We say you can join or remain isolated. We control the jump gates. We control access to interstellar trade. We control the communication networks. A species that refuses membership is effectively cut off from the galaxy. That's not force, Director Thorin argued. That's just the way things work. It's economic coercion, Iran countered. Perhaps unintentional, but coercion nonetheless. And humanity has recognized it. That's why they're building their own FTL drives, their own communication networks, their own everything. They're ensuring they don't need us. The debate continued, but it was interrupted by urgent news from border stations. New reports showed human activity had expanded dramatically. An intelligence officer, a Deveri named Kesslin, presented the findings with trembling wings. Honored Council, our observation drones have detected a massive increase in human construction. They've established forward bases in 14 star systems beyond their original territory, all of them uninhabited, but all of them strategically positioned along assembly trade routes. The chamber erupted in chaos. This is an act of war. They're preparing invasion routes. We must respond immediately. Kelrick studied the data carefully, and something didn't add up. These bases aren't positioned to attack anything. Look at their orientation, their defensive installations. They're creating a buffer zone. A buffer zone that includes systems we've used for 3,000 years, Corin growled. This is territorial expansion. No, Mira said, understanding dawning in her eyes. This is deterrence. They're pushing their defensive perimeter out so they have warning time if we attack. And they're doing it in uninhabited systems so they're not actually threatening anyone. They're just claiming empty space. She pulled up communications intercepts. Look at this. Human public broadcasts explaining the expansion. They're calling it strategic depth. They're telling their own population that these bases ensure Earth can't be attacked without warning. Sarah Chen's voice came through a secure channel they'd established. She was still aboard Kelrick's ship, having been granted temporary asylum. Ambassador, I tried to warn you. This is exactly what I meant by defensive superiority. Humans don't want to conquer the assembly. They want to make themselves impossible to conquer. There's a difference, and not to us, Corin shouted at the communication panel. You've invaded 14 systems. Uninhabited systems, Sarah corrected. We're not displacing anyone. We're not attacking anyone. We're just ensuring that if you decide to attack us, you'll have to cross a lot of empty space first. Space where we'll see you coming. Director Thorin's voice was heavy with resignation. So we're in a stalemate. We cannot attack without suffering unacceptable losses. They cannot expand without provoking us. And neither side trusts the other. Actually, it's worse than that, Mira said quietly. She pulled up new analysis, her wings completely still. Based on current trajectories, I've projected where this leads. The display showed timeline simulations. In 6 months, human technology would match assembly standard in several key areas. In a year, human defensive capabilities would make any attack prohibitively costly. In 5 years, humanity would have enough military power to threaten assembly core worlds. But that's not the worst part. Mira continued. Look at the economic analysis. Humanity's rapid advancement is attracting attention from other assembly members. Several species are asking questions. If humans can advance this fast independently, why do we need assembly guidance? If humans can refuse membership and survive, what's stopping us? Aaron nodded grimly. Dr. Chen was right about another thing. Humanity's resistance is inspiring. If we crush them, we prove we're the tyranny they claim we are. If we fail to crush them, we prove we're not as powerful as we claim. Either way, our authority is undermined. So what do we do? Thorin asked, and for the first time he sounded lost. The debate raged for days more. Hardliners demanded military action. Peacekeepers begged for more diplomatic efforts. And a growing faction suggested withdrawal, simply leaving humanity alone and hoping they stayed contained. But every simulation, every projection, every analysis came to the same conclusion. Time favored humanity. The longer the standoff continued, the stronger they became, both militarily and psychologically. Kelrick spent his nights reviewing human cultural materials, trying to understand the species that had thrown the galaxy into chaos. He watched their entertainment, read their philosophy, studied their wars. Slowly, a picture emerged. Humans were not naturally aggressive. They were naturally cautious. Their history was filled with examples of trust betrayed, of good intentions leading to disaster, of the powerful exploiting the weak. They had learned through painful experience that independence was worth any cost. But there was something else, too. Humans were also intensely social, deeply curious, and fundamentally hopeful. Their resistance to the assembly wasn't hatred, it was fear. Fear of losing themselves, their culture, their freedom to choose. He shared his thoughts with Sarah during one of their conversations. "You're right," Sarah confirmed. "Humans want to join the galactic community. We've dreamed of it for centuries, but on our terms as equals, with our sovereignty intact. The Assembly doesn't know how to do that," Kelrick admitted. "We've been the dominant power for 15,000 years. We've forgotten how to treat anyone as equals." "Then learn," Sarah said simply, "or accept that humanity will be your first failure. And probably not your last. Once other species see it's possible to resist, many will start asking why they shouldn't." The turning point came when Representative Velen proposed something radical. "What if we create a new status? Not member, not observer, but partner. A species that maintains complete sovereignty, controls its own military and technology, but engages in voluntary cooperation with the Assembly." "That's never been done," Thoran protested. "Exactly," Velen replied. "And look where our traditional approach has gotten us. We're on the brink of war with a species that represents no threat to us beyond our own pride." The proposal split the council. Some saw it as wisdom. Others saw it as weakness. But before they could vote, new intelligence arrived that changed everything. Kesslin burst into the chamber, his wings beating frantically. "Honored Council, the humans are broadcasting a message to everyone." The central display activated, showing a transmission being received simultaneously by every Assembly member world, every station, every ship. Humanity hadn't sent a private message to the Council. They had sent a public message to the entire galaxy. The transmission showed a human in military uniform, standing in what appeared to be a command center. The nameplate identified him as Admiral Marcus Webb, Supreme Commander of United Earth Forces. The Council fell silent, watching as humanity finally broke its silence. But the message they were about to receive would not be a plea for peace or a declaration of war. It would be something far more dangerous, a challenge to everything the Assembly believed about itself. Admiral Webb began to speak, and his words would echo across the galaxy for generations. Admiral Marcus Webb looked directly into the camera, his expression calm and measured. Behind him, the command center of Earth's orbital defense station hummed with activity. Every screen showed different star systems. Every console monitored different aspects of humanity's expanding defensive network. He wore a simple military uniform, no decorations, no insignia beyond his rank. His hair was gray, his face lined with years of experience. He looked like what he was, a soldier who had seen too much war and wanted no more of it, but who would fight if necessary. The transmission reached every corner of Assembly space simultaneously. On thousands of worlds and millions of ships, across the vast network of stations and outposts, sentient beings stopped what they were doing and watched. "My name is Admiral Marcus Webb," he began, his voice steady and clear. "I speak on behalf of the United Government of Earth and its colonies. For 6 months, the Galactic Assembly has wondered why humanity chose silence. Today I will answer that question." In the Assembly Council chamber, Director Thoran leaned forward, his massive body tense. Around him, hundreds of representatives watched in fearful anticipation. Webb continued. 6 months ago, we detected your beacon. We had been shouting into the void for generations, hoping to find others like us. When we finally found evidence of alien intelligence, it should have been the greatest moment in human history." He paused, and something like sadness crossed his face. "But our scientists analyzed your beacon. Our linguists decoded your messages. Our historians reviewed your protocols. And we realized something that terrified us. You weren't greeting us as equals. You were greeting us as children to be guided, as primitives to be uplifted, as subjects to be integrated." Kelrick winced. The words were harsh, but they weren't wrong. "You called your organization an assembly," Webb said. "We heard empire, you offered us membership. We heard submission, you promised guidance. We heard control. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps you truly meant every word of peace you offered. But humanity has learned a bitter lesson over its long history. Intentions don't matter if the results are the same." He gestured to someone off-screen, and the display behind him changed, showing statistics. The Assembly has welcomed 3,417 species into membership. Every single one surrendered its military independence. Every single one integrated into Assembly culture. Every single one became dependent on Assembly technology, Assembly infrastructure, Assembly permission to exist in the wider galaxy. "This is not an accusation of malice," Webb continued. his tone remaining measured. I believe the assembly genuinely wants peace. I believe you think you're helping. But from our perspective, you're offering us a choice between isolation and absorption. We choose neither. The display shifted to show human construction over the past 6 months. Shipyards, defense stations, FTL-capable vessels. We have prepared for war, not because we want it, but because we refuse to be helpless. We've built these weapons, these ships, these fortifications because history has taught us that the only freedom worth having is the freedom you can defend. Mira's wings trembled as she watched. He's speaking directly to every species in the assembly. Not just to us, to them. Webb's message continued, we know you're watching. We know you're afraid. Good. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. Fear means you're taking us seriously. Fear means you understand that humanity will not be easily conquered, easily controlled, or easily dismissed. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense. But let me be absolutely clear. We do not want war with the assembly. We never did. What we want is something you've apparently forgotten how to give. Respect. The word hung in the air, simple and devastating. Respect for our sovereignty. Respect for our right to make our own choices, even bad ones. Respect for our culture, our independence, our determination to forge our own path. You've spent 15,000 years being the guardians of the galaxy. Perhaps it's time to consider that not everyone needs a guardian. Director Thorin's voice was barely a whisper. He's challenging our entire purpose. Webb pulled up more data showing assembly member species. I'm not just talking to the assembly's leaders. I'm talking to every species listening to this transmission. Ask yourselves, when did you last make a decision without assembly approval? When did you last develop technology independently? When did you last tell the assembly no and have that answer respected? In the chamber, Kelrick saw representatives shifting uncomfortably. Webb was striking at the heart of the assembly's legitimacy, and doing it publicly where every member species could hear. Humanity offers an alternative, Webb said. Not conquest, not rivalry, partnership. We're willing to engage with the assembly and its members as equals. We'll share technology through voluntary exchange, not mandatory integration. We'll cooperate on mutual interests without surrendering our independence. We'll prove that species can work together without one dominating the others. He paused, letting that sink in. But this requires the assembly to accept something it has never accepted before, our right to say no. Our right to maintain our own military, our right to develop our own technology, our right to choose our own path, even if it differs from yours. The terms appeared on screen, clear and non-negotiable. 1. Recognition of human sovereignty over our claimed territory. No assembly ships, stations, or personnel without explicit invitation. 2. Voluntary technology and cultural exchange based on mutual consent, not dependency. 3. No requirement to adopt assembly protocols, join assembly institutions, or integrate into assembly culture. 4. Recognition of humanity's right to maintain independent military forces and unrestricted FTL. Capability 5. Formal recognition that saying no to assembly membership does not make us enemies or threats. Webb's expression remained calm, but his next words carried steel. These are not negotiable. We will not compromise on our sovereignty. We will not surrender our independence. We will not become another species that loses itself in the assembly's well-meaning embrace. The display behind him changed again, showing something that made the entire council chamber gasp. Human ships, dozens of them, appearing in the displays. Not simulation, real-time footage. I'm showing you this, Webb said, because silence has taught us something about you. You respect actions more than words. So let me demonstrate what humanity has achieved in 6 months of preparation. The footage showed human vessels appearing in orbit around major assembly worlds. Not attacking, not threatening, just appearing. The implications were staggering. Humanity had infiltrated assembly space completely, had positioned ships around their most important planets, and had done so without being detected. Keslin's wings had stopped moving entirely, frozen in shock. They're in orbit around the Council homeworlds. All of them. Right now. Webb's voice remained steady. These ships are unarmed. They carry no weapons, no hostile intent. They're here to deliver this message and nothing more. But they prove a point. We can reach anywhere in assembly space. Your technology is not superior enough to contain us. Your security is not perfect enough to track us. Your forces are not overwhelming enough to frighten us into submission. He let that statement hang for a moment before continuing. But here's what I want you to understand. We could have armed these ships. We could have sent weapons instead of messengers. We chose not to. That choice is the real message we're sending. Kelrick felt a chill run through him. Webb was demonstrating both capability and restraint. Proving humanity could hurt the assembly but choosing not to. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Some of you are wondering why we waited 6 months to send this message, Webb said. Why we chose silence over communication. Let me explain. We were listening. Every beacon you sent, every diplomatic overture, every observation drone you thought was hidden, we were studying you. Learning about you. Understanding how you think. Silence is not ignorance. Silence is not fear. Silence is strategy. While you worried about what we might do, we learned what you actually do. While you debated about how to respond to us, we prepared for every possible response. Silence gave us time to understand you better than you understand yourselves. Sarah Chen, watching from Kelrick's ship, felt tears on her face. Webb was saying everything she'd tried to explain, but with the authority and platform she'd lacked. Webb's tone softened slightly. But here's the truth that all the silence and preparation comes down to. We want to be part of the galactic community. We want to share ideas, exchange culture, learn from thousands of civilizations. We dreamed of this for centuries. We built monuments hoping to be found. We sent messages into the void begging for an answer. But we will not trade our freedom for acceptance. We will not surrender our sovereignty for security. We will not become dependents pretending to be partners. If the assembly can accept us as true equals, we will gladly work with you. If not, he paused and his expression hardened. Then we will go our own way, and you will learn to respect our borders. The display shifted one final time, showing projections of human advancement. Let me make one thing crystal clear. Time is not on your side. Every day we advance. Every day we learn. Every day we become harder to threaten, harder to control, harder to ignore. The humans you're dealing with today are not the humans you'll be dealing with in a year, or 5 years, or 10. So the assembly has a choice to make, and you need to make it soon. Accept humanity as sovereign equals with all that entails, or prepare for a future where an independent human civilization becomes the rule, rather than the exception. Because once we prove it's possible to resist assembly integration, others will follow. The genie doesn't go back in the bottle. Webb stood straighter, his voice carrying finality. This is humanity's message after 6 months of silence. We're here. We're staying. We will not be absorbed. You can have us as allies or as strangers, but you cannot have us as subordinates. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, but the human ships remained visible in orbit around assembly worlds, a constant reminder that humanity's words were backed by capability. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted, argued, demanded immediate action, but Director Thorin raised his arms, calling for silence. The Admiral made valid points, Thorin said heavily. Points we cannot simply dismiss. He spoke not just to us, but to every member species. If we refuse his terms and attack, we prove his accusations true. If we accept his terms, we fundamentally change what the assembly is. Then we change, Ambassador Velen said firmly, because the alternative is war with a species that has just proven it can strike anywhere, anytime. And even if we win, which is no longer certain, we'll prove to every watching species that the assembly is exactly what humanity claims, a benevolent tyranny. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Webb's message had changed the calculation completely. He had turned the situation from a bilateral negotiation into a public referendum on the assembly's very nature. Finally, after 3 days of intense discussion, the assembly voted. The margin was narrow, but it passed. Humanity would be recognized as an independent sovereign power, the first of its kind in assembly history. The formal response was drafted carefully, acknowledging humanity's terms while maintaining assembly dignity. But everyone knew the real message. The assembly had blinked first. 10 years later, Ambassador Kelrick stood in the same chamber, but much had changed. Humanity had established diplomatic relations with dozens of species individually, always as equals, never as dependents. Trade flowed freely, but on human terms, voluntary exchange, not systematic integration. More importantly, 3 other species had followed humanity's example. demanding renegotiation of their assembly membership terms. The assembly had agreed, creating a new category, partner species, independent, sovereign, free to cooperate or not as they chose. Kelrick met with Sarah Chen, who had been granted asylum and now worked as a liaison between humanity and the assembly. They stood before a viewing screen showing the busy space lanes between human and assembly territory. "You were right," Kelrick admitted. "About everything. We weren't conquerors, but we were controlling. We meant well, but intentions aren't enough." Sarah smiled. "And you've changed. That matters too. The assembly today is different from the assembly that found our beacon. Because humanity forced us to change," Kelrick said. "Webb's message didn't just challenge us, it changed us. Other species started asking questions we couldn't answer. We had to evolve or become irrelevant." He turned to look at her directly. "I spent months being angry about that. Angry that humans wouldn't just accept our help. Angry that you made us question everything. But now I'm grateful. You saved us from ourselves." "We saved ourselves," Sarah corrected gently. "But we gave you the opportunity to save yourselves too. That's what real partnership looks like." They watched the ships passing between human and assembly space, carrying goods, ideas, people. Not integration, but interaction. Not absorption, but exchange. Not dominance, but respect. "Do you know what the real lesson was?" Kelrick asked. "Webb said it in his speech, but I didn't understand it then. Silence speaks louder than words. Humanity taught us that the most important message isn't what you say. It's what you do when you have the power to destroy, but choose not to. We had ships in orbit around your most important worlds." Sarah agreed. "Unarmed, but capable of carrying weapons. We could have struck first, tried to cripple you before you could respond, but we didn't. Because humanity wanted peace, not victory," Kelrick said. "You wanted respect, not conquest. You proved it by showing restraint when you could have shown force. That's the message that changed everything." Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking about the long road that had brought them here. From silence to understanding, from fear to respect, from the brink of war to this cautious but real peace. "You know what I think about sometimes," she said. "What would have happened if we'd just responded to that first beacon with a friendly hello? If we'd trusted you, integrated into the assembly, given up our independence? We'd have lost ourselves, maybe slowly, maybe kindly, but we'd have lost what makes us human. And the assembly would have lost the chance to become something better." Kelrick added, "Sometimes the best thing a friend can do is refuse to let you make their choices for them." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the future unfold between the stars. Humanity had waited for a message of welcome and heard a threat. The assembly had waited for a message of greeting and heard nothing. But in that silence, both sides had found something more valuable than easy friendship. Mutual respect earned through strength, tempered by restraint, and confirmed by choice. The galaxy had learned a new lesson, one that would echo through the ages. Sometimes silence is not empty. Sometimes it's full of meaning, pregnant with possibility, waiting for the right moment to speak. And when humanity finally spoke after 6 months of carefully chosen silence, their message changed the galaxy forever. Not through conquest, but through the simple revolutionary act of saying no, and making it stick. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the stars drift by through the main window. His ship was not the biggest or strongest in the human fleet, but it was home to him and his crew of 43 people. They had been traveling through space for 6 months now, mapping new planets and looking for places where humans could build new homes. "Captain," called out his first officer, Lieutenant Tom Reed. "We are getting close to the meeting point. The elders should be waiting for us." Jake nodded. The elders were old beings who had been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. They were wise and peaceful, and they had helped humans learn how to travel between the stars. Today they wanted to meet with Jake's crew about something important, but they had not said what it was about. "Slow down the engines," Jake ordered. "Let's see what they want to tell us." The Defiant moved slowly toward a large space station that looked like it was made of crystal and light. It was beautiful, the way all elder buildings were. The elders had technology that humans still did not understand. even after working with them for 50 years. Dr. Anna Cross, the ship's science officer, looked up from her computer. "Captain, I am reading some strange energy patterns from the Elder Station. It looks like they are worried about something." Before Jake could answer, a voice came through the ship's communication system. It was deep and calm, the way Elder voices always sounded. "Human vessel Defiant. This is Prime Counselor Veth. Please come aboard our station immediately. We have urgent news that cannot wait." Jake had met Veth before. The Elder leader was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the light. His people had no hair, and their eyes were much larger than human eyes. They were strange to look at, but they had always been kind to humans. "Tom, you and Anna come with me," Jake said. "The rest of you stay on the ship and keep watch." The three humans put on their spacesuits and took a small shuttle over to the Elder Station. When they arrived, Veth was waiting for them with two other elders. The Prime Counselor looked more worried than Jake had ever seen him. "Captain Morrison," Veth said, his voice heavy with concern. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have discovered something terrible. There's a great danger coming to our galaxy." "What kind of danger?" Jake asked. Veth led them through the crystal halls of the station to a large room filled with glowing screens and strange machines. On the biggest screen, Jake could see a map of their part of the galaxy. At the edge of the map, there were dark spots that seemed to be moving. "They are called the Void Hunters," Veth explained. "They are machines, but they think and plan like living beings. Long ago, before your people even knew about fire, we fought a great war against them. We thought we had destroyed them all, but we were wrong." Anna stared at the screen. "How do you know they are coming back?" "Our deep space sensors have detected their ships," another elder said. "They are moving toward the center of the galaxy, destroying everything in their path. They do not want to rule or take things, they want to kill all living beings." Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps 6 months before they reach the first human colonies," Veth said. "Maybe less." Tom stepped forward. "What do these ships look like? How strong are they?" Veth touched a control and the screen changed. Now it showed huge black ships that looked like they were made of metal and shadow. They were bigger than anything Jake had ever seen, even bigger than the largest human cities. "Each ship can destroy a planet," Veth said quietly. "And they have thousands of ships." Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the Elder Station. Red lights flashed, and Jake could hear elder voices speaking quickly in their own language. "What is happening?" Jake asked. Veth's large eyes grew even wider with fear. "They are here. The Void Hunters have found us." Through the station's windows, Jake could see dark shapes appearing in space. The black ships were enormous, and they moved without making any sound. They looked like hungry sharks swimming through dark water. "We must leave now," Veth said, running toward the exit. "The station cannot fight them." Jake and his people followed the elders through the crystal halls. Behind them, they could hear terrible sounds as the Void Hunter ships began their attack. The beautiful Elder Station shook and cracked as energy beams hit it. They reached the shuttle just as part of the station exploded in bright flames. Jake started the engines and flew as fast as he could back to the Defiant. "Get us out of here now," Jake shouted as soon as he was back on his ship's bridge. The Defiant turned and began to run, but Jake could not stop himself from looking back. The Elder Station was breaking apart, its crystal walls melting like ice and fire. The Void Hunter ships moved through the wreckage like they were looking for something. "Captain," Dr. Cross said, her voice shaking. "I am reading the energy output of those ships. One of them has more power than our entire home fleet." Tom looked at the screen that showed the enemy ships. "How are we supposed to fight things like that?" Jake did not have an answer. He watched as the black ships finished destroying the Elder Station and then disappeared into hyperspace, probably going to attack somewhere else. Prime Counselor Veth, who had escaped with them, stood quietly in the corner of the bridge. His silver skin had turned darker, and Jake could see that the elder was very afraid. "Counselor," Jake said gently, "what can you tell us about fighting these things?" Veth looked at him with his large, sad eyes. "Captain Morrison, my people have fought wars for millions of years. We have technology that your species is only beginning to understand. But against the Void Hunters, we lost. They are not just machines. They learn from every battle. They adapt. They become stronger. Then how do we stop them? Anna asked. I do not know, Veth said quietly. But perhaps humans can find a way that we could not. Your people are young and think differently than we do. Maybe that will be enough. As the Defiant flew through hyperspace toward human territory, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered if Veth was right. Could humans really fight an enemy that had defeated the ancient and powerful elders? Behind them, the empty space where the Elder Station had been was now filled only with floating pieces of crystal and metal. The Void Hunters had left nothing alive. The emergency meeting room on Earth Station 1 was crowded with worried faces. Admiral Lisa Kane sat at the head of the long table, looking at reports from across human space. The news was getting worse every hour. 3 more colonies have gone silent, reported Commander Bethhart, her voice tight with fear. That makes 7 in the past week. Whatever these Void Hunters are doing, they are moving fast. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the big screen that showed a map of human territory. Red dots marked the places where colonies had stopped sending messages. The pattern was clear. The enemy was coming straight toward Earth. Tell them what you saw, Captain, Admiral Kane said. Jake looked around the room at the faces of generals, admirals and colony leaders. Some of them he knew, others were strangers. But they were all looking at him with the same question in their eyes. How bad is it? The Elder Station was completely destroyed in less than 10 minutes, Jake said slowly. These black ships are bigger than anything we have ever built. Prime Counselor Veth told me that one enemy ship has more power than our entire home fleet. A colony leader named Robert Mills stood up. He was a big man with gray hair who had helped build the farming colonies on the outer worlds. Then we should run, he said loudly. We should take our people and go to the far colonies, as far away from these things as possible. And leave. The galaxy to die? Asked General Marcus Webb. He was an old soldier who had fought in the border wars 20 years ago. The elders helped us reach the stars. Without them, we would still be stuck on Earth. We owe them our help. We owe our children a future, Mills shot back. What good will it do if we all die fighting something we cannot beat? Dr. Anna Cross, who had come with Jake from the Defiant, stepped forward. She had been working without sleep for 3 days, studying the data they had collected from the Void Hunter attack. I have been looking at the energy readings from the enemy ships, she said. They are powerful, yes, but they are not magic. They follow the laws of physics just like everything else. That means they can be damaged. That means they can be destroyed. Admiral. Kane leaned forward. What did you find, Doctor? Anna turned on a small computer and showed them pictures on the main screen. The black ships use a kind of energy field to protect themselves. But when they fire their weapons, the field has to open small holes to let the energy beams through. For just a few seconds, they are not completely protected. General Webb nodded. So we need to hit them at exactly the right moment. It would be very difficult, Anna said. We would need perfect timing and a lot of luck, but it might be possible. Prime Counselor Veth had been sitting quietly in the corner. Now he stood up, his tall, thin body moving slowly like he was very old and tired. There is something else you should know, he said in his deep, calm voice. The Void Hunters are not just machines. They share one mind, one consciousness. When one ship learns something, all ships learn it. They become smarter and stronger after every battle. Then how did you fight them before? Jake asked. Veth's large eyes looked sad. We had help from other races. Many different peoples worked together. But even then, we barely won. Most of our allies died in that war. We thought it was worth the cost because we believed the Void Hunters were gone forever. The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone was thinking about what Veth had said. Finally, Admiral Kane spoke. How many ships do we have that can fight? About 400 warships, answered Commander Hart. Plus maybe 2,000 cargo ships that we could convert to carry weapons. It is not much. The Void Hunters have thousands of ships, Jake said quietly. Each one stronger than anything we have. Mills stood up again. You see? This is exactly what I am talking about. We cannot win this fight. We should take our people and run while we still can. But General Webb was shaking his head. Running will not work. These things want to kill all living beings, remember? They will keep chasing us until they find us. The only way to save our people is to stop them here. A young officer named Lieutenant Dan Fox raised his hand. What about the other races in the galaxy? The traders, the builders, the cloud people? Will they help us fight? Beth looked even sadder. Most of them are already running away. The traders have taken their ships to the far edge of the galaxy. The builders are hiding in their deep space stations. Only a few races are still willing to fight. Admiral Kane stood up and walked to the big window that looked out at Earth. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from here, but Jake knew that millions of people down there were scared and waiting to hear what would happen. I have made my decision, Kane said, turning back to face the room. Humanity will fight. We will not run away and let these things destroy everything we care about. Mills slammed his hand on the table. That is not your choice to make alone. What about the colonies? What about the families who will die? They will die anyway if we run, Kane said firmly. At least this way they will die fighting for something important. General Webb smiled for the first time in days. What are your orders, Admiral? Kane looked around the room at all the worried faces. We gather every ship we can find. We call back every soldier on leave. We turn our mining colonies into weapons factories and our cargo ships into warships. We prepare for the biggest fight in human history. Dr. Cross raised her hand. I will need more scientists to study the Void Hunter technology. If we are going to fight them, we need to understand how their ships work. You will have whatever you need, Kane promised. Jake stepped forward. Admiral, let me take the Defiant out to rally the outer colonies. There are ships and people out there who do not know what is happening yet. Good idea, Captain. Take Prime. Counselor Veth with you. The colonies need to hear from both humans and elders that we are working together. As the meeting ended, people began to leave to start their preparations. Jake found himself standing next to General Webb. Do you really think we can win? Jake asked quietly. Webb was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. I do not know, son, but I know one thing. Humans have a way of surprising people. We are young and stupid and stubborn. Sometimes that is exactly what you need to beat an enemy that thinks it knows everything. Outside the station, transport ships were already moving, carrying the news to every human world. The message was simple. The galaxy was under attack and humanity would not run away. The war was about to begin and 2 months after the emergency meeting, human space looked completely different. On every world, people worked day and night to prepare for war. The mining colony on Titan had become a giant weapons factory. Children who had never seen a gun were now learning how to shoot. Old cargo ships were being covered with metal plates and fitted with missile launchers. Colonel Tom Reed stood on the surface of New Haven, watching thousands of elder refugees set up their temporary homes. The planet had been a quiet farming world just weeks ago. Now it was one of the most important military bases in human space. How many more are coming? Asked Private Lisa Brown, a young soldier who had volunteered to help with the refugees. About 10,000 more elder survivors are on their way, Tom said, looking at his report tablet. They lost almost everything when the Void Hunters attacked their worlds. Tom watched as human soldiers helped elder families carry their few belongings to the refugee camps. The tall, silver-skinned beings looked lost and scared. These were people who had lived for thousands of years, who had built amazing cities among the stars. Now they had nothing but the clothes on their backs. An elder child, no bigger than a human 10-year-old, tugged on Tom's uniform. The child's large eyes were filled with tears. Will the bad ships come here too? The child asked in broken human language. Tom knelt down so he was at the same height as the child. We are going to stop them before they get here, he said gently. I promise. The child nodded and ran back to his family. Tom hoped he could keep that promise. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, Commander Beth Hart was working with a team of engineers on something that had never been tried before. They were taking apart Void Hunter technology that Dr. Anna Cross had managed to collect from the destroyed Elder Station. "Be very careful with that piece," Anna warned, as the engineers moved a strange black metal fragment. "We still do not understand how it works." Beth looked at the twisted metal through the protective glass. It did not look like much, but this small piece had come from a ship that could destroy planets. "Have you learned anything useful?" Beth asked. Anna rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working for 16 hours straight. "The metal is not like anything we have ever seen. It seems to repair itself when it gets damaged. But there is something interesting. It gets weaker when it is far away from other Void Hunter ships." "What do you mean?" "The enemy ships make each other stronger when they are together," Anna explained. "But if we could separate them, if we could get them to fight alone, they might be more vulnerable." Beth nodded. This was important information. "I will tell Admiral Kane right away." On the other side of human space, Captain Jake Morrison and the Defiant were visiting the outer colonies, trying to convince people to join the fight. It was not easy work. "You want me to send my ships to fight those things?" asked Captain Roy. Kim, the leader of the merchant fleet at Frontier Station. "My ships are not warships. They carry food and medicine, not missiles." Jake understood Roy's fear. The merchant ships were not built for fighting, but they needed every ship they could get. "We can add weapons to your ships," Jake said. "And you know these trade routes better than anyone. We need ships that can move fast and strike where the enemy does not expect it." Roy looked out the window at his fleet of cargo ships. They were old and slow, but they had carried supplies to human colonies for 30 years. "What about my crews?" Roy asked. "These are not soldiers. They are engineers and cargo handlers." "We will train them," Jake promised. "General Webb has set up training camps on 12 different worlds. Your people can learn to fight." Beside Jake, Prime Counselor Veth spoke up. "Captain Kim, I have lived for over 2,000 years. I have seen many wars and many brave people, but I have never seen anyone prepare for battle the way humans do. You do not just fight with weapons. You fight with your hearts." Roy was quiet for a long time. Finally, he sighed. "How many ships do you need?" "All of them," Jake said honestly. "Then you have them. But I want my people to get the best training you can give them." Jake shook Roy's hand. "You have my word." Back on Earth, Admiral Kane was in the war room, looking at reports from across human space. The news was both good and bad. "The good news is that we now have over 3,000 ships," reported General Webb. "Not all of them are real warships, but they can all fight." "And the bad news?" Kane asked. "The Void Hunters are moving faster than we expected. They will reach the Kepler system in less than 3 weeks. That is where we have to make our first real stand." Kane looked at the star map. The Kepler system had 5 planets and about 2 million human colonists. It was also the gateway to the inner colonies. If the Void Hunters got past Kepler, they would have a clear path to Earth. "How many enemy ships are we looking at?" Kane asked. "Our scouts report at least 50 of the big black ships, plus hundreds of smaller ones," Webb said grimly. Dr. Cross entered the room, looking excited despite her tiredness. "Admiral, I think I have found something important." She turned on the main screen and showed them a recording from one of the scout ships. "Watch what happens when the Void Hunter ships attack a planet," she said. On the screen, they could see the black ships firing their terrible energy beams at a world. The planet's surface burned and cracked, but something else was happening too. "Look at the ships," Anna said, pointing at the screen. "See how they position themselves? They form a perfect pattern, like they are following a plan that was made long ago." "So?" Webb asked. "So they are predictable," Anna said with a smile. "They always attack the same way. They always move in the same patterns. We can use that against them." Kane leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Doctor?" "The Void Hunters are machines, even if they can think. They follow programs. But humans do not follow programs. We can be random, chaotic, unpredictable. We can do things that make no sense to a machine mind." General Webb grinned. "Like what?" "Like ramming our ships into theirs. Like attacking when we should be running away. Like fighting even when we know we cannot win." Anna's eyes were bright with excitement. The Void Hunters have fought the Elders, who are logical and careful. They have never fought humans who are crazy enough to try anything. Kane stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see transport ships carrying supplies to the fleet. Workers were loading missiles and fuel. Families were saying goodbye to sons and daughters who might never come home. "Send the order," Kane said quietly. "All ships are to gather at Kepler. We make our stand there." "And if we lose?" Webb asked. Kane turned back to face the room. "Then we make sure we hurt them, so badly that the next human fleet has a better chance." As the orders went out across human space, thousands of ships began to move toward the Kepler system. Cargo ships with missile launchers welded to their hulls flew beside real warships. Civilian volunteers worked next to trained soldiers. Elder refugees worked beside human engineers. The largest fleet in human history was gathering for the most important battle they had ever fought. No one knew if they would win, but everyone knew they had to try. In the darkness between the stars, the Void Hunter ships continued their advance, their black hulls reflecting no light. They had destroyed civilizations for millions of years. They had never lost a war. The space around Kepler Station was filled with ships like never before in human history. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Thunderbolt, watching the massive fleet take their positions. 3,000 human ships spread out in a defensive line, ready to face the approaching darkness. "Final count, Admiral," reported Commander Hart. 250 real warships, 800 converted cargo vessels, and the rest are support ships with whatever weapons we could find. Kane nodded. It was not nearly enough, but it was everything humanity had. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system from the Defiant. "Admiral, our forward scouts report enemy contact in 30 minutes. 57 of the big black ships plus over 300 smaller ones." Kane felt her stomach tighten. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that had never lost a war. But she also felt something else. Pride. Every ship in her fleet was here by choice. No one had been forced to fight. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane," she said, into her microphone. "Today we make history. Today we show the galaxy that humans do not run from a fight. Remember what Dr. Cross taught us. Hit them when their shields are down. Be unpredictable. And whatever happens, do not give up." On the planet below, Colonel Tom Reed was preparing the ground defenses. 2 million colonists had refused to evacuate, choosing instead to help defend their home. Men and women who had been farmers and shopkeepers just months ago were now carrying weapons and manning defense stations. "Sir, we have movement in space," reported Sergeant Mike Davis, looking through his telescope. "I can see flashes of light." Tom looked up at the sky. Even in daylight, he could see the bright explosions as the two fleets met. The battle for Kepler had begun. In space, the Void Hunter ships appeared like a dark wave rolling toward the human fleet. They moved in perfect formation, just as Dr. Anna Cross had predicted. Their black holes seemed to absorb all light, making them look like holes in space itself. "All ships, execute Plan Chaos," Kane ordered. Instead of meeting the enemy in neat battle lines like a traditional space battle, the human fleet scattered in all directions. Cargo ships loaded with missiles flew straight at the enemy's flanks. Fast scout ships darted between the big black ships, firing at anything they could hit. The converted mining ships, tough as rocks, rammed themselves into enemy vessels. The Void Hunters had never seen anything like it. Their perfect formations began to break apart as they tried to target the wildly moving human ships. "It's working," shouted Commander Hart. "Look at them. They don't know which ships to shoot at first." Dr. Cross, working at a science station on the bridge, was tracking the enemy's energy patterns. "Wait for it. Wait for it. Now! The big ship on the left is opening its shield to fire." A group of human fighters dove toward the exposed Void Hunter ship, their missiles striking the weak point in its armor. For the first time in the war, a big black ship exploded in a ball of fire. Cheers went up across the human fleet, but Kane knew they could not celebrate yet. The enemy was adapting, learning from this first defeat. Captain Roy Kim, leading his converted merchant ships, found himself face to face with 3 Void Hunter vessels. His old cargo ship was no match for their weapons, but Roy had an idea. "All cargo ships follow me," he said over the radio. "We're going to try something stupid." Roy's ship and 20 others flew straight toward the enemy ships, not firing a single shot. The Void Hunters, confused by this strange tactic, hesitated for just a moment. In that moment, Roy's ships released their cargo, thousands of metal containers that scattered like a cloud in front of the enemy vessels. When the Void Hunters tried to move forward, they collided with the floating debris, damaging their perfect hull surfaces. "Now!" Roy shouted, and hidden behind the cargo containers, a squadron of human fighters attacked the confused enemy ships. But the battle was far from over. The Void Hunters were learning fast, adapting their tactics to match the chaotic human style. Their smaller ships began to spread out, copying the human strategy. On the Defiant, Jake watched as one of the enemy's big ships turned toward his position. Its weapons were charging, ready to destroy his ship with a single shot. "Captain, we can't outrun that thing," said Tom Reed, who had been promoted and was now serving as Jake's first officer. Jake looked at his crew. They were all young, all scared, but none of them were giving up. "Then we don't run," he said. "All power to forward shields. We're going in." The Defiant flew straight toward the massive enemy ship, dodging energy beams that could have vaporized them instantly. Jake waited until they were almost touching the black hull, then fired every weapon they had at point-blank range. The explosion damaged both ships, but the Defiant survived while the Void Hunter vessel began to break apart. Prime, Counselor Veth, who was on the bridge with Jake, looked amazed. "In 2,000 years, I have never seen anyone attack like that. You flew into certain death and somehow lived." "That's what humans do," Jake said, breathing hard. "We're too stupid to know when we're supposed to die." But the tide of battle was turning against them. For every Void Hunter ship they destroyed, they lost 5 human vessels. Admiral Kane watched her fleet being slowly torn apart. "Admiral," Dr. Cross called out urgently, "I'm detecting something strange. The enemy ships are all connected to each other somehow, sharing information instantly. But I think I've found their weak spot." "What is it?" "They have a command ship, bigger than the others, staying far back from the battle. If we could destroy it, the other ships might be confused long enough for us to escape." Kane looked at the battle display. The command ship was surrounded by dozens of defenders, far behind enemy lines. It would be a suicide mission. "I'll take a strike team." Jake's voice came over the radio. He had been listening to their conversation. "Captain, that's suicide," Kane said. "Maybe. But if we don't try, we're all dead anyway." Kane looked around her bridge at the determined faces of her crew. They had come so far, fought so hard. She made her decision. "Do it, Captain. Take whoever volunteers. We'll cover your approach." Jake gathered 12 of the fastest ships, including several piloted by elder survivors who wanted revenge for their destroyed worlds. As they began their desperate flight toward the enemy command ship, the rest of the human fleet launched one final, massive attack to draw attention away from the strike team. The battle for Kepler had become a race against time. Could Jake's small force reach the command ship before the main fleet was completely destroyed? In the darkness of space? Captain Jake Morrison flew the Defiant through a storm of enemy fire, leading his small strike team toward the massive Void Hunter command ship. Behind him, 11 other ships followed, their pilots knowing this was likely their last mission. "Stay close to me," Jake said over the radio. "When we get near that command ship, we only get one chance." Beside him on the bridge, Prime Counselor Veth was working frantically with Dr. Anna Cross's virus program. The computer virus was designed to attack the Void Hunter's shared mind, but it had to be uploaded directly into their command center. "How much longer do you need?" Jake asked as enemy energy beams flashed past their ship. 2 more minutes, Veth replied, his silver fingers moving quickly over the alien controls. "The virus is almost ready." Behind them, the main human fleet was fighting desperately to keep the enemy busy. Admiral Kane watched as ship after ship was destroyed, but her remaining vessels kept fighting. They had to give Jake enough time. "Admiral," "We've lost half our ships," Commander Hart reported, her voice heavy with sadness. Kane clenched her fists. So many good people were dying. "Tell all ships to keep fighting. Every second we buy might save the galaxy." On the planet below, Colonel. Tom Reed and his volunteers were also under attack. Void Hunter landing ships had broken through the space battle and were now trying to destroy the ground defenses. "They're coming from the east," shouted Sergeant Davis as black enemy ships landed near the city. Tom and his people fought with everything they had. Farmers used hunting rifles against alien machines. Children too young to fight helped reload weapons and carry supplies. Elder refugees worked alongside humans using their knowledge of Void Hunter technology to find weak spots. "Sir, we can't hold them much longer," a young soldier reported. Tom looked at the scared faces around him. These were not professional soldiers, just ordinary people defending their homes. "Then we make every shot count," he said. "For our families. For our future." In space, Jake's strike team was getting closer to the command ship, but they were taking heavy losses. 3 ships had already been destroyed and the others were badly damaged. "Defiant, this is the Eagle," came a voice over the radio. It was Captain Roy Kim, leading the converted merchant ships. "We're coming to help you." "Roy, stay back," Jake ordered. "Your ships can't handle this kind of firepower." "Maybe not, but we can't let you go in alone." Before Jake could argue, Roy's cargo ships appeared, flying between the strike team and the enemy defenders. The old merchant vessels took hit after hit, their improvised armor barely holding together. "Go!" Roy shouted as his ship exploded around him. "We'll cover you!" Jake felt tears in his eyes, but he could not stop now. The Defiant and 4 surviving ships pushed through the enemy line toward the massive command vessel. The Void Hunter command ship was 3 times bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. Its black surface was covered with strange symbols that seemed to move and change. This was the brain of the enemy fleet, the center of their shared consciousness. "I'm detecting thousands of Void Hunter minds inside that ship," Veth said, his large eyes wide with amazement and fear. "They are all connected, all thinking as one." "Not for much longer," Jake said grimly. "Prepare for ramming speed." "Captain, wait," Veth said suddenly. "I need to go with the virus. The upload must be done manually, and only I understand the Elder technology well enough to make it work." Jake looked at his old friend. Veth had been with them since the beginning, had helped them understand the enemy. "Veth, if you go over there—" "I know," the Elder said calmly. "But this is the only way. My people died because we could not stop these machines. Now I can finish what we started long ago." Jake nodded slowly. There was no other choice. The Defiant flew toward the command ship's docking bay, followed by 2 other human vessels. Enemy defenders tried to stop them, but the small ships were too fast and too determined. They crashed through the energy barrier protecting the docking bay and landed hard inside the alien ship. Jake, Veth, and a team of volunteers ran through corridors filled with strange machines and blinking lights. "This way," Veth said, leading them deeper into the ship. "The central processor should be at the core." They fought their way past mechanical defenders, losing people with every step. Finally, they reached a huge chamber filled with glowing screens and pulsing energy cables. At the center was a massive computer that seemed to be alive. "This is it," Veth said, pulling out the virus device. "The heart of their network." But as he approached the computer, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The Void Hunters had realized what they were trying to do. "Hurry!" Jake shouted, firing his weapon at the mechanical guards that were pouring into the chamber. Veth reached the computer and began connecting the virus device. But just as he was about to complete the upload, an energy beam struck him in the back. The Elder fell to the ground, badly hurt. "Veth!" Jake ran to his friend's side. "The upload," Veth whispered, blood flowing from his mouth. "You must finish it." Jake looked at the complex alien controls. He did not understand Elder technology, but he had watched Veth work. With shaking hands, he pressed the final sequence of buttons. The virus uploaded into the Void Hunter network. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly the lights in the chamber began to flicker. The mechanical guards stopped moving. Throughout the ship, Systems began to fail. "It's working," Jake breathed. The virus spread through the enemy network like a disease, attacking the shared consciousness that connected all Void Hunter ships. Across the galaxy, black ships suddenly stopped in the middle of battles, their crews confused and unable to work together. In the space around Kepler, Admiral Kane watched in amazement as the enemy fleet began to break apart. Ships collided with each other as their coordination failed. Others simply stopped moving, floating helplessly in space. "All ships, attack now," Kane ordered. While they're confused, the surviving human vessels launched everything they had at the disabled enemy ships. Without their shared mind to guide them, the Void Hunters could not adapt fast enough to defend themselves. One by one, the black ships were destroyed. Jake carried Veth's body back to the Defiant as the command ship exploded around them. The Elder had given his life to save the galaxy, just as so many humans had died in this terrible war. The victory at Kepler was complete, but the cost had been enormous. Half the human fleet was gone. Entire colonies had been destroyed. Families across human space mourned their dead, but they had won. The Void Hunters were defeated, their remaining ships fleeing back to the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. 1 year later, Admiral Kane stood in a memorial garden on Earth, reading the names carved into a great wall of stone. Captain Roy Kim was there, along with thousands of others who had died to save their people. "Admiral," said a young voice behind her. Kane turned to see a small girl with her mother. The child was holding a flower. "My daddy's name is on the wall," the girl said. "Mommy says he helped save everyone." Kane knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, he did. Your daddy was a hero." The girl placed her flower at the base of the memorial wall, next to thousands of others. Above them, construction ships were building new space stations. The galaxy was healing, and humans and elders were working together to make sure the Void Hunters could never return. In schools across human space, children learned about the war and the people who had fought in it. They learned that sometimes, ordinary people must do extraordinary things. They learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but fighting despite fear. And they learned that when the galaxy needed heroes, humanity had answered the call. The war was over,